Greetings everyone. Let me start with telling that the subject of this talk should not be regarded in isolation. It must be seen in strong connection with our conference title, A Mind Embracing the Universe. Now the subdivision of manas sounds like a very monastic topic. However, we should not linger at manas, but use it for greater purposes. Moreover, this subject of the subdivision of manas is an essential part just to outgrow the monastic level, as we shall see. So we are really talking about an important step in the way to express the universal consciousness that is in us, the mind embracing the universe. A mind that is the servant of a compassionate heart. This also brings me to the main starting point. Unity. With all theosophical teachings, we always hold the first proposition and its conclusions in mind. There is unity, and we are it. It also means that there is one order, one law ruling the universe, one pattern that all beings follow. The consequence of that is the law of analogy. As above, so below. The patterns of life repeat themselves throughout the universe. You will find it everywhere in Theosophy. Man is the sevenfold microcosm of the sevenfold macrocosm. In other words, we have everything in us that is in the universe, and therefore are able to understand the universe, be at home in the universe, and will finally even become the universe. Following this law of analogy, we can discover all secrets of nature, but only if we comply to the natural law of compassion, to work on with nature, to work for others, and to forget ourselves in the service of all. Because whatever divisions we will make to better understand the universe, it is really only a step to return to unity in action. So we must look at divisions always in the light of the first of 7 principles, the unity that includes us all, that includes all. Now let us look at what H.P. Blavatsky says about the sevenfold division. In her article Classification of Principles, she explains the theosophical sevenfold division. It was a reaction to Sabaro, a fellow Chela at the time, who objected against this division. It is an interesting dialogue that is probably known to many of you. But it is not so important to go into this in detail now, nor do we have the time to do so. First, she explains the sevenfold division is a convenient division. She writes the sevenfold classification is the right one, for it is simply a convenient division. So just convenient. So this already means it is not the only division you can make, nor is the sevenfold an absolute final division. Let's see what she adds. As in the macrocosm, so in the microcosm, analogies hold good throughout nature. Thus, the universe, our solar system, our earth, down to man, are to be regarded as all equally possessing a septenary constitution, 4 superterrestrial and superhuman, so to say, 3 objective and astral. She continues, it is purely a matter of choice which classification we adopt. Strictly speaking, however, occult as also profane physics would favor the septenary one. It is purely a matter of choice, she writes. So it's really not so important if you take a 2-fold, 3-fold, 4-fold, 5-fold, 7-fold, 10-fold, or 12-fold division, as long as you keep realizing that the highest aspect unites them all. It is what it says, a division. And reasoning from unity, every division is in a certain sense illusory. It is only part of manifestation. However, she does defend the septenary division as the right one from an occult standpoint as well as from the perspective of profane physics. And this we all know. For example, from the 7 colors of the rainbow or a ray of light through a prism. But keep in mind, it is our perspective to distinguish 7 colors. We have a certain bandwidth and make certain divisions. But we are really talking about one ray of white or rather colorless light. Now let's move from the septenary division to our subject of manas. Manas is a Sanskrit word that can be translated by thinking or mind or mental activity. Manas is one of the 7 principles of consciousness. If counted from below, it is the 5th, or from above, the 3rd principle. You could also say it is one of the 6 manifestations of Atman, the divine or universal principle, the all-including first principle. Or you could say it is the vehicle of Buddhi, or the enlightenment principle, which is itself the vehicle of Atman. The word man comes from the Sanskrit word manas, because we, and by we I mean we as eternal pilgrims or monads, are developing the manas part of our consciousness during this human stage of development. In other words, man is a thinker. Or rather, man expresses consciousness through thinking. As the Buddha clearly said, all that we are is the result of what we have thought. It is founded on our thoughts, it is made up of our thoughts. Now the question arises, what are thoughts? This can easily be answered as a consequence of our starting principles. All manifestations have in essence all qualities or potential of the whole, so everything in essence is alive, including thoughts. As Master K.H. says, remembering thoughts are things, have tenacity, coherence, and life, that they are real entities. The rest will become plain. So thoughts are living entities, living beings belonging to the elemental kingdom. So man is a thinker, and you could state that we are universes for thought elementals, that constantly embody and re-embody within our sphere. And manas, or thinking, can be defined as perceiving these entities, perceiving thoughts. Now let's see if we can apply the septenary subdivision to manas. Let's start again with some quotes of HPB. She writes, "The student must bear in mind that every principle in man has its 7 aspects. Thus the brain has its 7 divisions, each corresponding to a principle. Every microcosm the mirror of a macrocosm." And she gives as an example the lowest principle, or the Stula Sharira. And I continue to quote, "Man's physical body has its 7 aspects, each aspect representing a principle. Then each of these has its 7 subdivisions, each subdivision in its turn representing a principle." And then she adds something very important for our current theme. "It is because of this intricate correspondence," she writes, "carried out in every detail, that man will ultimately be able to come into contact with every realm of being in the universe. This and this alone makes Raja Yoga possible." End of quote. And Raja Yoga means literally kingly union and stands for the path to unity by controlling our mind or thinking. So in other words, the correspondence of the subdivision of 7 aspects of each principle with the principles themselves is an essential key for embracing the universe. Let's work this out a little more in visual detail with the following diagram. We start, of course, with the boundless, which is all. Every manifested being is a stream of consciousness originating in essence from the boundless. And for each consciousness, including the human, you can distinguish 7 principles. This is a diagram that can be found in part 2 of the Secret Doctrine, only I applied the order that HPB gave in her Esoteric Instructions number 2, with the Linga Sharira being the vehicle of prana. Now man is currently developing the thinking principle of consciousness, manas, as said before. Now the 3 higher principles, forming the triangle, can jointly be called the self, with a capital S. And these 3 together form the lasting part of man, the enduring part. The 4 lower principles form man's vehicle, that which is transitory. The man that mainly identifies with the 3 higher principles is the real thinker. And the man that identifies mainly with the vehicle, or 4 lower principles, using his lower manas, is the personality. It is that part in us that lives in the illusion of separateness. We enter the personality when we say to ourselves, I am I, separate from others. Now let's point out the subdivision of manas to take a closer look. As HPB said, each principle can be divided into 7 aspects that correspond to the 7 principles. When we make the subdivision for manas, we see that there are 7 focuses that manas can have, 7 aspects of thinking. To start with the lowest, the focus on the sthula sarira, or physical thinking. This happens when we identify with our body and say I am cold, warm, hungry, thirsty, tired, etc. The focus on the linga sharira, or our feelings, is the next aspect of thinking. This happens when we identify with our emotions and say I'm cheerful, angry, scared, sad, or happy. Then we have the focus on our prana or vitality. When we identify with that, we cannot sit still. We want to get things done and want to do things immediately and by ourselves. Then we have the focus on kama or desire. This happens when we identify with our desires or longings. And there are, of course, many types of desire. There are the materialistic ones, wanting to possess things, but there are also desires for more subtle things, like results, honor, or status. Desire is a neutral force, and you have positive desires, such as love for wisdom or philosophy, and philanthropy, the love for our fellow human beings. We can recognize the focus of our manas on manas in intellectual thinking, intellectual endeavors, reasoning, logic, rationality. You could call it the 2 + 2 = 4 type of thinking. It is indispensable in science. Our intellect is very good at compartmentalizing, to name everything, and especially what something is not. And that might seem enlightening, but the intellect may often lead us to a dead end if it is not guided by its higher aspects. Reason does not create, is a famous saying, and the intellectual often lacks the bigger picture and can lose himself into details. On the other hand, when our thinking focuses on the buddhi principle, our thinking is characterized by seeing coherence, understanding and insight. then we do see the bigger picture. We recognize patterns and are able to understand the laws of nature. We cannot be successful in the domain of philosophy without this Buddhic aspect. Then we have to recognize the forces that work behind the phenomena to structure the perceptions that we have classified in a scientific manner. Finally, when Manas focuses on the principle of Atman, this is characterized as a complete sense of unity. The activity of this aspect of thinking is still very rare for the ordinary man. These are the experiences from the mystics, who all declare that it cannot be uttered or described in words. You can call it religious experiences, in the literal sense of the word religion, to reunite. The founders of the great religions have all in a certain degree experienced this level of consciousness. Some people have flashes of this experience, like great artists in moments of inspiration. So you see that we can clearly recognize this sevenfold subdivision in our thinking. And it also means that we are able to direct our thinking accordingly. Let's repeat a bit the subjects we have treated. We have explained that thinking is perceiving thoughts and that we are thinkers. Human beings experience everything through thought. And these thoughts are living entities. They evolve through our awareness of them, our focus on them, and the attention we give them. And like all living entities, thoughts re-embody themselves and are cyclic. Think about the thoughts that embody within the cycle of each day when you get up. Thoughts on brushing your teeth, having your coffee, breakfast, etc. But there are thoughts that embody within a larger cycle, like the thoughts that you were thinking about this annual ITC conference, for example. Think again of Buddha's words. All that we are is the result of what we have thought. It is founded on our thoughts, and it is made up of our thoughts. Now we are both a transmitter and receiver of thoughts. And how we are tuned, according to the sevenfold subdivision, determines what kind of thoughts will continue to find their embodiment within our thinking sphere. You could state there are 7 classes of thought elementals. And there is a great responsibility here, because these elementals will also have their existence in the elemental sphere, and they can multiply themselves and also infect others for good or bad. We constantly share thoughts while communicating, but we don't even have to pronounce thoughts before they can manifest and multiply themselves. They can already be picked up by others that are tuned on the same wavelength. So we are constantly adding to the mental atmosphere, if we are aware of it or not. Now, based on the sevenfold division, we can learn to control and direct our thinking. We can direct our thinking by consciously choosing the quality of thoughts that we embody within our sphere. We need all 7 aspects, but to be a harmonious thinker, the highest aspects have to be in the lead, and the lower aspects must act as servants. This is what it means to really think independently. With our thoughts, we can directly benefit humanity. Blavatsky writes the following about this subject. The occultist should train himself to receive and transmit, along the line of the 7 skills of his consciousness, every impression or impressions simultaneously. End of quote. Now we can only receive and transmit on the 7 skills simultaneously if we have developed all 7. And that particularly holds true for the development of the highest or atmic aspect, because that one includes them all. And that means we have to train ourselves to be constantly aware of our thinking and to learn to consciously direct it at any given time with the main focus on the highest aspect, the sense of unity. Now to conclude, how can we do this in practice? As Judge says very clearly in one of his articles, we have to focus on the highest ideal. You could say that it is the hierarch, the silent watcher of thought elementals. And he shows in his famous meditation on Brahma, part of our readings, how you can make our common ideal of universal brotherhood, let us say, a more grown-up elemental. He starts with identifying himself with his friends, his enemies, all ignorant ones, all nations, and further until he reaches the level of Brahma itself. And going that far, he found that the ideal to contemplate of all men as himself was much easier to return to. This ideal will grow, as we said, with all the focus and attention we will give it. And the best times for a meditation like this is early in the morning when we wake up and just before sleep. As Catherine Tingley says so beautifully, when rising in the morning, our first thought shall be, I shall make the day of sunshine. I shall make the day one of sunshine. I shall put into each duty, no matter how small, unselfish thought. And you all know the Pythagorean rule, never sleep before you have gone over all thoughts and deeds. What have I done? And what have I done wrong? And what duties were left undone? To conclude why the sevenfold division of manas is so essential for embracing the universe, we could say that by learning to control and direct our sevenfold mind, we can learn to focus on the most universal. We can, so to say, synthesize all colors again to form one ray of pure white light. And we have then become a perfect vehicle for the divine part in ourselves, our inner God, the part that embraces the universe. And then we will be able to share the divine inspiration with everything that lives. I wish you all a great ITC conference full of embracing and universal thoughts. Thank you.